Hey learners, this is the full interview with Dr. Andriy Samokhvalov, also known as Dr. Sam's Health here on YouTube. I featured him in my last video where I fasted for 3 days. He's very knowledgeable on this topic and the underlying biochemistry, and this interview is very rich with information. However, I am aware that it's a long video, and so to save you time, I've broken it down into the topic of discussion at any given moment. In the description and the top comment, you'll see a time breakdown of the entire interview, so you can find the topics you're interested in and just watch those parts. So briefly, just to give you guys an idea of how to access these timestamps, just in case you're wondering, if you scroll down here to the description, you can see a full breakdown. Each time corresponds to a topic. And so if you're interested in any of these topics, just click this time and you can watch that section. Or if you're having trouble with the description, you can scroll down here to the comment section. And I have the exact same thing right here as the top comment. And just to note, it's very similar on mobile. So if you're on your phone, it's basically the exact same steps. Yeah, so with that said, let's just jump right into the interview. Okay, yeah, so thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to speak with you just to get, more of a, I guess, science-based approach to all of this fasting stuff. I've been looking into it recently, and actually, while I was preparing to do the 3-day fast for myself, I found your video, which you made a couple weeks ago. So I watched that, and yeah, I was just really interested. I thought maybe we could just start off talking about maybe our experiences with that 3-day fast, and then we can maybe move into some other topics. Um, I guess I'll start since I already know a bit about how yours went. So yeah, I started on last Sunday, and I did 72 hours. So I took some like salt and potassium and magnesium throughout it just to keep electrolytes going. There you go. Yeah. So yeah, I just had like water, black coffee, black tea, and then just yeah those supplements. So yeah, the first 24 hours I found really good. I had some good energy. I was obviously hungry, and it would spike throughout the day. I actually had a tracker. My phone would go off every hour, and I would record how hungry I felt and how much energy I had. So I'm gonna have to go through all that data, see if I can see the trends. But yeah, the first day was pretty well. The second day was really rough. I found a big lack of energy. I was just like more. I felt it more psychologically than physically on the second day. Like I was fixated on food. Um, I just and it wasn't even necessarily from hunger, right? Like I was just thinking about, oh, I want to make this or eat that. So second day it was pretty bad, and then the third day it was sort of like a hybrid of both days. I started off and I finished with a lot of energy, and in the middle I just sort of hit this wall of big lack of energy. I was still trying to exercise and work out during it, and I just found that I I just didn't have the energy on the third day to really get a good workout in, right? So it affected that.
Sorry for smiling when you are saying
No.
all these things. It's just like exactly what I experienced, and that's exactly what we are supposed to experience, in my opinion. But please,
Yeah. So yeah, that was sort of it. I broke the fast with just some like bone broth and some lighter foods. Um, the next day I made the mistake of not really taking the nutrition part as I guess seriously as I should have. So I was eating, I ate like a pizza and stuff, and it just, it was not a good idea for I just didn't feel well, right? Like I almost felt sick, but it makes sense because from what I've read, your sort of, enzymes and stuff and your gut mucosal layer sort of start to slow down and that sort of thing. But anyways, yeah, so I definitely lost a little bit of weight. That wasn't really why I was doing it. But like the fat loss aspect is just like a sort of a cherry on top, right? Like wasn't doing it for that, but it's nice to know that maybe you're gonna lose some fat. Um, it's hard to say in regards to like muscle loss if I experienced that, right? It's pretty like anecdotal just looking in the mirror to say, oh, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Um, but yeah, I noticed some fat loss. I'm not sure how much of what I noticed was maybe water retention that would come back. Um, but yeah, that was my experience. What about you?
I made this video, and everybody can watch it, obviously. And I actually document the way I felt and what I've been doing all these days. all these 3 days. I actually started with the idea of replicating some study which had a 48-hour fast, but I realized I've got an issue with the way I track my weight, because I usually check my weight in the mornings, and I started my fast like at 3 p.m. So I didn't know where is the baseline. And the irony is that the study had exactly the same problem, but they didn't care about weight to begin with. And what has been happening with you, I think, is just like a perfect example of what should happen to human body when we fast. First day, it's barely noticeable because we all are supposed, our bodies are designed to withstand some food deprivation moments of like when we cannot hunt down something, we cannot find some food, and it's totally fine. You don't get any kind of postprandial relaxation, fatigue. Every time we have a massive meal, our body gets into this rest and digest stage, right? And we tend to have a bit of a clouded judgment. We are relaxed. We are not really motivated to do things. Cognitively not that acute, because there is no need in chasing something, finding food. All our life problems are kind of solved, right? And but the days 2 and 3, we get our body has to find other resources for getting some nutrients and for energy, and it obviously starts stepping into first glycogen. Actually, the reason why we don't feel particularly bad on day 1 is because we normally have around 24 hours of supply of glycogen or glucose, right? So as we run out of glycogen, our body has to find other sources of glucose and energy. And I'm saying glucose, I'm separating it because certain organs in our body are relying on glucose. One of them is red blood cells. They don't have nuclei, so they cannot derive energy from anything but glucose. And that's why our body starts actually burning a little bit of protein. Certain amino acids have been converted into glucose so that they can be used by red blood cells. And another organ, which is actually huge, and it takes like a good chunk of our total daily energy expenditure, is brain. And brain is normally running on glucose. It kind of prefers it, but it usually takes around 2 weeks to switch to other sources of energy. And there are like very famous charts of like preferential use of different sources of fuel, carbohydrates, glucose, fat, and protein. And what happens in the first 2 weeks? Obviously, we run out of carbohydrates very quickly within a day. Then our body uses a lot of protein actually to feed our brain, and then it switches almost completely to ketones.
Okay.
Sorry, there is a fly, and it's just. I live on the 7th floor. I don't know where they come
Oh my
from.
God.
And since I'm fasting most of the time, I don't even have any food. But when we run out of glycogen on days 2 and 3, we start actually craving any kind of foods, as you described. Psychologically, we're adapting to new environment. Our brain is literally thinking about the ways you can get these nutrients, right? And it's a very like evolutionary thing. You do not get enough energy because your body starts kind of sparing energy, and our basal metabolic rate apparently goes down a little bit. Our another aspect of metabolism is this non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which means that like right now I'm talking to you, I'm making lots of gestures, right? You move, we fidget, we do lots of things. When we are starving, our body starts slowing down these things and becomes super efficient with energy. And it shows. On the other hand, I believe that when you are undergoing a very severe food deprivation, your body will still burn a lot of fat. And I actually made a video about the metabolic conundrums. A lot of people have this information, or they make the statements like every time you go on a diet, your metabolism slows down. Yeah, it does slow down a little bit. But at the same time, ages ago, when we didn't have nutrients available freely, we wouldn't be able to find them. And if you say you are unsuccessful in 1 or 2 days, in terms of like hunting or finding any food, you would definitely have we would not survive if our bodies were not able to activate fat, protein, anything that it can use uh, to feed itself, to sustain itself. Couple of things that you mentioned are actually quite interesting. The way I didn't feel particularly good when you had pizza. It's actually very interesting. I don't work a lot with people with eating disorders, but it's a very hallmark feature for people with anorexia. They have something that's called refeeding syndrome. The thing is, like, when you are undergoing a very intense fasting for a certain period of time, usually we're talking about days, people run out of glycogen, and the part of the molecule of glycogen is phosphorus. So it's like phosphorylated glucose that is attached to each other. And when people run out of all the glycogen, they run out of, there are shifts in the phosphorus levels. And when you start refeeding, your body starts rebuilding this glycogen. And there are like very significant, sometimes even life-threatening changes in phosphorus levels and certain electrolytes. So that's important to not to break a fast abruptly,
Right.
or with lots of carbs, actually.
Okay.
Another thing I was thinking about is, a lot of people are talking about how fasting is helping with cognition, right? And that is the reason why the reason why I started my YouTube channel is just because there are so many people who have this Dunning-Kruger effect. They have read a little bit about something, and now they think they know everything, and they do some misinformation effective that sometimes can be dangerous, right? And there are actually quite famous people, I don't want to name them, who talk about fasting, and you can find logical fallacies in pretty much everything that they say, or they misinterpret research just to sell their books or something like that. But the thing is, I believe that intermittent fasting, for example, is very helpful. I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it most of the time, just because I usually don't have time for breakfast. I usually have something happening during lunchtime in the clinic, so I kind of skip my breakfast, lunch, and I usually eat once a day, and it works out perfectly well for me. I don't get this postprandial fatigue or relaxation, and I think it activates lots of processes like autophagy, and it kind of keeps me alert and awake, and in a way that pretty much it eliminates all this postprandial stuff. And that is why people who are undergoing some intermittent fasting, they're feeling great. But with fasts, I think it's totally logical to expect that lots of things will slow down. I've right now doing another experiment, which is a very low calorie diet, and I'm eating like between 500 and 800 calories a day,
Wow.
and it's quite frankly, it's a disaster. Because I'm doing a 3 months transformation, and I lost a lot of weight. But a couple of weeks ago, I was feeling like I'm slipping, and I decided to double down on my efforts, and I started this thing a week ago. Actually, today is day 8, and I noticed that I feel cold, like literally most of the
Okay.
time I feel cold. Everybody feels it's like super hot outside, and it's like I'm almost shivering.
Wow.
The irony is that I'm not shivering because my body is saving energy. It takes energy to shiver, right? And then I'm
Wow.
just like, very, very tired most of the time, and so on. Good thing it's going to be over in like a week.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
yeah, but
Yeah, so it's really interesting you bring up the like eating one meal a day thing because I was actually just talking to my dad earlier today, and he was telling me that lately he's felt that eating he hasn't really felt like eating the whole 3 meals a day type of thing, and that he's sort of just without necessarily researching and looking into it all, just uh, gone for just eating 1 meal a day. And he said he feels much better that way in terms of, say, digestion and just how he feels. And I just found it really interesting how he sort of came across that on his own and just from how he felt decided that, that's sort of the better way. Whereas, I think a lot of people would need sort of um, like more research or at least like another opinion about maybe why that would be beneficial. And I guess that's what you're going for with your channel, like you were saying, is there's so much information and maybe some you can find a study that I'm sure could show almost any conclusion, especially in terms of nutrition. There's so much information available, and it's hard for somebody without that, say, medical background to decipher it and to come to a conclusion. And of course, maybe what would work for one person wouldn't work for another person. So I guess that's really a benefit of sort of what you're doing, especially with your channel, where you're trying to take your scientific background, your medical background, and show people exactly what's going on. A lot of what you were talking about, was stuff that maybe I had heard of some of the terms, right? Like I've looked into, say, autophagy you mentioned, but then when you were talking about the processes, like the breakdowns of fats and proteins and the glucose and all that, like I can tell that you bring, obviously, as a like medical director and everything that you're doing, you really bring that, um, you know, the knowledge that you wouldn't get otherwise. Like even for me, someone who sort of looks into it and research, I say research, probably not the same kind of research that you're looking into. I'm looking more
But
into.
likely, for interrupting, but likely the irony is it's the same research that we're looking at. But it's very interesting how, you know, I mentioned this Dunning-Kruger effect, and by all means, I don't mean you. It's just like, it takes a lot of years of medical school to actually understand this research. And I actually see a lot of my colleagues who, for example, and I've done a lot of uh, actual research myself, and I see how my colleagues they can misinterpret information. There are so many tricks and statistics that people use in their studies. We got lots of like really funny phenomena when, for example, there are certain medications that are associated with like terrible cardiovascular effects. I don't want to name the medication just because it's irrelevant, but uh, and there was like a meta-analysis that showed that the chances of a person of having a heart attack on this medication are twice higher and so on. But if you look into that, you will see that it was like a long-lasting multiple studies that involved like 40,000 people in one group, 40,000 people in another group, 20 people out of 40,000 had heart attack who in the group that didn't take this medication, and like 35 had heart attack in another group. So statistically speaking, it was statistically significant because it was a huge study, like 80,000 people in total. And the statistically speaking, it's significant, and the odds are like twice higher chances. Relative risk is 1.75. So for everybody who doesn't even like read behind the abstract of the article, it clearly shows that the medication is like a terrible choice, right? But realistically, we're talking about some super rare event, and the clinical significance of this information is not there, quite frankly. And it's a smoking cessation medication, so I would rather have anybody being at slightly higher risk of having a cardiovascular event due to the medication rather than to significantly higher risk of having a heart attack because of smoking, right?
For sure.
And the same happens with all these nutritional studies. They're actually very difficult to conduct because people tend to not. So you have to either do them in a very restricted environment, like metabolic chamber and so on, which is super expensive, super restricted. You cannot keep a person there for like months, right? So it's
Yeah.
likely will be limited to several days, like the best case scenario, a couple of weeks. And if you do it like on outpatient basis, and I'm always using this clinical terms, but I'm talking about like free life experiment, people would not be able to track everything. They will drop out. They will have some cheat meals. They won't tell you about them. It's very hard to monitor and track everything. So this nutritional research is actually very difficult to conduct. And actually, I tend to digress a lot. But what you were talking about, you can read a textbook on or read some explanation done by somebody like very brilliant lecturer who explains things to you, and you'll have a good understanding of it, or at least you will think so. But in order to properly understand what was happening in the human body in certain studies, you actually have to study biochemistry, pharmacology, lots of substances, lots of subjects, and it takes years to actually like kind of create a good understanding of what's happening there. And I kudos to you because you are doing this.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, so you mentioned you're doing intermittent fasting. So I guess as a medical guy, what sort of drove you to deciding to do that? Did you maybe read, some benefits of it, or like how long have you been doing it, and why are you doing it?
And honestly, the reason that drove me to that is just pure convenience. I know for sure there are lots of research, not lots, but quite a few, like several, but the studies that compare like clinical trials of intermittent fasting versus continuous restriction of caloric intake, and they actually show there is, in terms of weight loss, there is not much difference. But uh, for me, the first thing is convenience. Just because I naturally skip breakfast, I naturally tend to skip uh, lunch, and I know for sure that if, for example, if I come home, I have my meal prior to working out, likely I will not be able to work out,
I
and
find the
so
same thing. Yep.
yeah, and that's actually, to be honest, the very first driver. The second one, it's much easier to control a caloric intake if you're eating like once a day. So if you're going through multiple meals throughout the day, it's very easy to, even if you plan them very properly, it's very easy to add 100 calories here, 100 calories there, have a 200 calorie snack, snack with something like nuts that are like super calorific, right? And at the end of the day, you will end up having like hundreds, if not thousands of calories more than you intended. Sometimes I'm saying thousands because it happened
Yeah.
quite a few times. Even in the past 3 months, I've been following just a low calorie diet and low carb, and I met with a friend, and we wanted to have a meal, and I thought, okay, I'm doing this approach, so that's I'm okay with having a Caesar salad. I'm okay even with like having chicken in it, all the stuff, and croutons, which is not particularly low carb, right? But she orders this stuff, and she said, they also have like chicken wraps. I said, well, the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And we ordered them, and they turned out to be some sort of Sichuan, not sure how to pronounce it, chicken wraps. They are indeed like wraps done in the form of like lettuce, but there's lots of sweet sauce, there are lots of nuts. And when I calculated what was there, it turned out that that day I consumed like 3,000 calories just because the slippery slope. And it was like ridiculously counterproductive in my case. Uh, Also, I do believe that I feel better when I eat like once a day. It helps me to plan my day properly. And there are lots of benefits that I kind of tend to agree with. Like one of them is the start of autophagy. So essentially, what happens is after several hours of each meal, we've got a drop in glucose levels, drop in insulin levels, and our body starts to activate its resources to keep the glucose levels and energy levels at the same level. And that involves pretty much self-cleansing, right, if you will. So pretty much everything that is in your bloodstream starts being used. Your body activates, mobilizes lipids, mobilizes glycogen, and starts, unfortunately, mobilizing uh, protein. It's hard to say what's the timeline, but all these things have been mobilized. And actually, I know for sure that some people are talking about having elevated, say, LDL cholesterol and other things that they are happening just because of this activation, mobilization of lipids. So our body starts actually releasing lipids from the fat storages, and that might result in some transient elevation of blood lipids. But I believe that this thing, if you manage to go past 10, 12 hours, they follow in several hours, so somewhere between 12 hours and 18, 20, 23 in my case, your body is actually cleaning itself up. And that would be something that I guess we can call autophagy. And the whole idea is that our body just like eats anything that is not necessary. So it's like all our cells have some debris in them. There are some dead cells. There are some dead like molecules, particles, organic molecules that can be mobilized, burnt, transformed into something. And I think that was the reason why this gentleman received the Nobel Award for that. I don't remember his name, but
Right.
it has been received. And also, I know for sure that uh, lots of research shows that people apparently have some cognitive improvement. I don't notice it much. I think that the main effect is just simply the fact that you are not slowing yourself down with lots of food. You do not spend a lot of time. Actually, you're becoming more effective and efficient during the day because you do not waste a lot of time cooking,
Yeah.
thinking about food, and consuming food and recovering from the like postprandial effects of food, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Also, there are some indications that caloric restriction in general and intermittent fasting, if it is associated with caloric restriction, leads to like longer lifespan. There are not too many experiments done on humans,
Right.
thank God,
Yeah.
but, but they've done a lot of experiments in some worms and some uh, on mice, guinea pigs, and so on, and they see that actually intermittent fasting in mice leads to like significantly increased
Oh,
lifespan by like 30% and so on. I'm not
wow.
sure how it can be translated into us, but it is promising. And we know for sure that actually they also use some medications like metformin, for example, in certain worms and I think in mice too. And they see comparable effects. And metformin helps regulating glucose levels. And I think that, you can actually take metformin to extend your lifespan theoretically, and some people are doing this, but I don't think that you need any supplements. Actually, by having intermittent fasts or just regular fasts, you become more metabolically flexible, and you might extend uh, your lifespan. And I think in general, part of this autophagy is literally cleaning of your body from, I hate this word toxins, but pretty much everything that is not necessary for survival is being utilized and transformed into either something useful or being excreted and
Yeah.
released. And returning to, I just realized that we're talking about weight loss. I actually did this experiment with myself, and I can attest to the fact that it returned to the same trajectory that I was at. And as you said, it's likely loss of water. So when you go on a very strict fast, you do not get any food, you drink some water, but your gut contents gets kind of dumped. And also, what is super important, we do have some glycogen in our muscles, in our liver, and this glycogen is very hygroscopic. It attracts a lot of water. So when you burn this glycogen, and it's usually we have around like 400 or 500 grams of glycogen, we tend to lose another like 3, maybe 4 pounds of water. So it's absolutely normal, even if your gut is full, if you go for a 1 day, 2 day fast, you will lose all this glycogen, most of it with water. So
Okay.
essentially, you will naturally lose several pounds of body weight, and it's actually lean body weight. So
True.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. When you work, say like if you're at the clinic and you're working with, uh, say clients, uh, do you have you ever recommended, say, fasting for any type of ailment? Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot that you deal with, but is that even not necessarily say if somebody obese or anything like that, just in general as health advice, do you ever recommend it?
To be honest, no. And the reason for that is actually, when I started this YouTube channel, I realized I'm in a very funny bind. I cannot make certain recommendations, quite frankly, unless they're like ironclad. And fasting, intermittent fasting, keto are kind of, some people would call them fad diets. I do not believe that they are fad diets. I believe that they're actually quite legit approaches. I can even back it up with science, but uh, in many cases, this kind of recommendations will actually go against the Canadian nutritional guidelines, right? So people are recommended to have certain kind of meals. There's this food pyramid or
Right.
a plate, and people are recommended to have certain amount of bread, certain amount of carbs, certain amount of vegetables, and it's very hard because you are already contradicting something that is an official kind of position of
Right.
whole branch of Canadian government. Uh, and another thing is what I do recommend though is I recommend just being mindful about your nutrition, and by being mindful, it naturally helps with restricting several things. One of them is all kinds of processed foods. Second thing is refined sugars, and when people are reducing those, and when they start, say, not necessarily counting calories, but actually making sure that they have decent sized meals, they naturally gravitate towards way healthier eating. So the food that does not, it doesn't become keto. It usually becomes some sort of a relatively, like I would say, a diet that is lower in carbohydrates or at least lower in refined sugars. Usually people start being mindful of how many calories they need, how many calories they consume. And here I'm actually balancing on another problem, which is sometimes many of my patients, they have not necessarily an eating disorder, but the propensity to develop one. So it's hard to recommend even counting calories because we know for sure that for people with, say, anorexia, it can trigger pretty bad kind of clinical outcomes. So I have to be mindful about that. So to short answer, no, I don't recommend intermittent fasting, but I'm usually very supportive if people bring it up themselves. And we just discuss things that I can discuss without stepping into some dangerous clinical territory.
Right.
And I see a lot of people in the last, like say in the past 10 years, there was a huge shift towards ketogenic diet, which is a topic for a very separate discussion. My introduction to this world of nutrition was through Atkins' diet. And
Okay.
I was actually shocked because when I read his book, it totally made sense. And I realized that all these dogmas that we were kind of learning in medical school, they are literally dogmas. So there were lots of guidelines that are actually somehow completely disconnected from the biochemistry. So he was, his book was the first place where I actually learned, or like I actually knew all this stuff. But I just realized that indeed, when you consume lots of carbs, there is an insulin release, and insulin's job is to convert this excess glucose into fat. So if we can control that, we can control the fat deposition and fat mobilization. So it totally makes sense to reduce carbohydrates. I actually, in the past several years, I realized I shifted a little bit towards, no matter what we do, it's still calories in, calories out. And I believe that, restricting processed foods, restricting carbohydrates helps a lot. But still, if you are on a super keto diet, and that is what I don't like about it, but if you're consuming lots of calories, you are about to gain weight. And actually, I'm a member of, not secretly, openly a member of lots of Facebook groups, and I can see lots of people talking about their plateauing, and ultimately what they need to do is they need to restrict their caloric intake. And yeah, and there are lots of things. Actually, I'm going to make a video about keto maybe in several months. There are a couple of things I don't like about it because I do like this approach, but what is happening, people are taking the research from like 1930s, 40s, when they were using ketogenic diet, a true ketogenic diet, for management of epilepsy. And the goal of that diet was not to lose weight. The goal of this diet was to completely restrict carbohydrates so that our body starts burning lots of fat give our bodies lots of fat so that it can burn more and produce lots of ketones. And that was the whole point of that diet. But now they're kind of blindly translating it into the benefits of the modern ketogenic diets, and people believe that they need to eat a lot of fat in order to lose weight, which is, even the way it sounds, is wrong. But actually, it is wrong. And I see a lot of people who are just drinking this bulletproof coffee, adding butter
Right.
into
I've seen
coffee,
that. Yeah,
having
yeah.
lots of bacon and so on. I love all these things, but if you are consuming like 3,000-4,000 kilocalories per day, and your total daily expenditure is 2,000, you're not gonna lose weight. It's just like impossible.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I could see maybe how an approach like that might work alongside intermittent fasting. If you only have an hour to get in, no matter how many fats you eat, I'm sure that can help you get that number closer to, maybe 2,000 or so, depending on the person. But yeah, you mentioned like medical school. I'm just curious, did you have any learning about any types of fasting for medical benefit throughout your education?
Actually, yes, and that is one of the things I think I started with that in my video, but it is in my blog. I put it there. That I'm actually shocked with people talking about fasting like a very new thing. We know for sure that, I don't know, ancient Greeks were talking about fasting being helpful, and all these ancient healers, they were talking about fasting as a technique to improve health, longevity, to help with certain ailments. And not that we started like dietary science or nutrition much in medical school, I must admit. And actually, I noticed that a lot of doctors here don't have this kind of experience or courses. But for sure, we have lots of purposes or uses for fasting in medical field. Like starting with preparation for surgeries, that's one of the important things. Like especially like abdominal surgeries, when possible, people are not supposed to consume uh, any food. Sometimes there are lots of they have special meals for them, in terms of like their color, the composition, and so on. Sometimes when people are having like GI tract issues, obviously food intake has to be modified, especially if there are some problems with liver or pancreas or gallbladder. If somebody has like acute pancreatitis, not that I treat it a lot, I don't treat it a lot. I'm a psychiatrist, right? But I remember that people were always recommended like medications, certain procedures, and on top of that, fasting for a certain period of time to help their GI tract appendices, like pancreas and gallbladder and liver, to go through this acute phase of the disease and so on. So that is for sure. In terms of, I don't see much. Well, I cannot say I was taught anything about fasting in other contexts, like
Okay.
for longevity, for health, and so on. And this discoveries are, well, studies and talking about this, they became kind of popular or mainstream only in the past maybe 10 years. But once again, throughout human history, fasting, especially before medications, before like 150 years ago, fasting was like a mainstream prescription for pretty much anything,
Wow.
at least in Russia.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, keep you too long. I'm sure you're really busy. I've been loving this discussion. Just getting this, you have a very scientific approach to it in the way that you sort of break down the information. So it's really interesting to hear from you in this sense, rather than some fit guy on YouTube who maybe looked at a uh, couple articles before making a video, and then, like you said, maybe sort of fudging the information to explain why this or that, right? So yeah, it's been really refreshing to talk like this. I just something I wanted to ask you. I was curious about because like that 3 day fast was very like intimidating going into it, right? I think most people, and myself included, up to a few weeks ago, like never would have thought I could make myself go 3 days without food. Like, it just seems impossible. So did you do that? Um, challenge. I don't want to call it a challenge, but did you go through that just purely to sort of test out? You mentioned a study about like mental alertness during that. Um, I don't know, like, what motivation did you have to go through that? Like I said, like it's so daunting. Uh,
Quite frankly, there was nothing daunting about this. I know for sure that we all are supposed to, like, if we're in the wilderness and there is no food, we are not going to die, given that we have got quite a few fuel supplies all over our body. So, um, multiple little reasons. One of them is I was sleeping on my diet, and I decided to do, like, why not doing that? I also came across this study. Actually, the main, like, the triggering event for the chain of, like, thoughts about this was I watched one video of one ridiculously famous YouTuber about the timeline of intermittent of fasting, what happens to your body, and he was talking about this magic effects of fasting and how at 8 hours your body starts doing this, and
oh
12
my
hours your
god.
body starts doing that. I maybe you can guess who it was, but I always wondered, where did this guy get this information from? And I started searching for that, and I found this article, which was an actual trial of fasting, and it kind of coincided with my vision of it and understanding that, you're not supposed to feel particularly great. And I wanted to test that, but one thing in this article was that they took people who were not essentially keto adapted, and I assumed that since I was on my regular diet, which is like relatively low carb, I could try this fasting on top of that. And since I'm already keto adapted, I might not experience this negative effects of 2 3 day fast on my cognition. I've been proven to be wrong, and the study that they have shown was totally making sense. But again, I did not feel there's something impossible to do. Moreover, I had days in my life when I would just, since imagine somebody who is doing 1 day meal most of my life. Imagine that one day you skipped the meal. You had an on-call shift, you skipped the meal, then you went to bed, then you woke up, there is another day, you keep doing things. And hunger actually, ironically, kind of comes and goes. And if you're busy with certain things, you might not experience any problems at all. So yeah, there was some pangs of hunger, but like 20 minutes later, you forget about this. And having like 36, 48-hour fast for me was nothing extraordinary. And I'm pretty sure that maybe last year I had a bit of a stressful period of my life in my life, and I was super busy, and I went effectively like 3 or 4 day fast without any preparation, without pretty much unconscious. I just like did it was conscious, but I was conscious all the time, but I just like didn't care about food at all. So this kind of things did not scare me. I already knew that, theoretically we are supposed to withstand it relatively easily. I was curious what will happen if I actually uh, do a little bit of like self-observation and awareness exercises, and I actually admire the fact that you are actually tracking your state using this app, because likely there's a theory there is sort of circadian rhythm uh, involved. So at the times when you are when you used to have your meals, likely will have a little bit more hunger. And I'm just like curious what will be your outcome.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I noticed that 100% that around lunchtime, breakfast, I totally felt an increase in hunger then. So yeah, once I
Yes, I just want to say one thing. That since I'm a medical doctor, I have to warn people. There is, I said that we're supposed to withstand that. There is a couple of categories of people who should not do this,
okay.
or should do it with, like, in a very direct communication with their doctor. Some people who have, say, type 2 diabetes, or even type 1, people who have taken insulin, people who have taken any kind of sugar lowering drugs, they should not try this kind of things without talking to their doctor. For obvious reasons, because their sugar levels will drop naturally, but also they are taking some sugar lowering drugs, and these medications, or like insulin, they will drop their sugar levels to a certain level that is might be actually then pass beyond dangerous, which is dangerous, and sometimes it can be lethal. So I actually had not funny, an experience with my mom. She was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes several years ago, and I'm doing this quotation marks because it was not real type 2 diabetes, it was pre-diabetes, and her doctor prescribed her some, I think it was metformin actually. But and I spoke to her and said, Mom, you don't need to take medications at this stage. You can just try dietary intervention, just reduce your carb intake, and likely everything will normalize very quickly. My mom listened to both people and did both things, and she was feeling very, very like lightheaded, not well at all, and she didn't disclose for the first several days that she was on a sugar lowering pill. And when I was obviously angry, just like, why? Like, either or, you should not be doing this. But it's a good example of like how people can try to, it's actually a very North American thing to try to get the best result ever, and doubling down, tripling down on our efforts. So if you are taking any kind of sugar lowering pills, if you got clinical endocrine disorder like diabetes, talk to a doctor, make sure that you either stop taking these medications or taper off them as you are reducing your caloric or carbohydrate intake, because that can be associated with pretty bad side effects, right?
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you, but I felt it would be important to mention.
For sure. No, thank you. That's great. Really good to have that. I would have had no idea. Yeah. Well, I mean, I asked you for a quick, maybe 15, 20 minutes. This turned into close to an hour. So, sorry for going over there. But yeah, for anyone interested in what you do in your channel, Dr. Sam's Health, why don't you just tell me, or tell whoever's watching, what you do with your channel, sort of what might be interesting to them and what they can get out of watching some of your content.
So my channel is called Dr. Sam's Health, and it's a kind of YouTube version of my website, drsamshealth.com. What I started it with, or the whole purpose, was just to share the knowledge, because I've seen a lot of misinformation on YouTube, on the internet in general, and I wanted to provide people with some sort of a reasonable, leveled opinion from somebody. And I do not even claim to be like an expert in nutrition, expert in, I think I am in certain aspects, but I'm not a dietitian. I used to say I'm not a coach, but actually I got my certified strength and conditioning specialist certificate a couple of years ago. I know decent amount of information about nutrition, biology, physiology, biochemistry, pharmacology. I have been doing lots of like self-experimentation. I have been consulting people in terms of like weight loss, and I believe that I can spread good information, kind of fight disinformation or misinformation, and I hope that there are some topics that people would benefit from. The irony is that actually my most watched videos are about this chair, for example, just because it's a chair. But I hope that one day I'll hit the right button and the channel will skyrocket. Also, I'm writing actually 2 books at the same time. One of them is it will be, I hope to publish it in a couple of months. It's a no-nonsense guide to weight loss. Another one is much more extensive. And actually I started writing the guide because I've been writing a much more serious book, and I realized it might be too serious for people. Likely like a huge tome, but the no-nonsense guide will be something that people can read in just 1-2 evenings and have a clear understanding that there's lots of nonsense. There is a no-nonsense part of it, and there's like it's not rocket science. It's very easy. Sorry, it's very simple. Often it's not easy, but if you trust certain formula, certain system, you can actually lose weight very efficient. and it kind of boils down to calories in, to calories out. But I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah.
And I will announce it on my channel. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, really, actually. I'm sure, you'll talk about it on your channel once you get closer to that date. Yeah. Well, yeah, I just want to thank you so much for this. I really enjoyed this talk. And yeah, I'd love to maybe keep in touch and then, just to, follow along your channel and see some of the new content you make.
Thank you so much. And I realized you live relatively close, actually.
Yeah,
It's so hilarious that how
I
people find
know.
on YouTube and you live like, I don't know, 70, 80 kilometers away, which is by Canadian standards, like neighborhood, right?
Yeah, for sure, exactly. I know. It's funny because I found out your channel and all that, and then I didn't realize until a little bit later that yeah, you literally lived this how close, like next city over. Yeah, it's funny.
Exactly.
Yeah, but thank you again, taking time out of your busy day. I really appreciate it.
My
And
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
for sure. All right, well, take care.
All the best.
Thanks again to Dr. Sam for this interview, and thank you for watching it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you don't hate puppies, and I'll see you next time. Later.